Skype. This is the story of how a company that owned video calling, with 300 million monthly active users and a name so dominant it became a verb, managed to lose everything in the exact moment it was supposed to win. On May 5, 2025, Skype was officially shut down, ending a 22-year journey from revolutionary startup to cautionary tale. And the most shocking part is that it wasn't killed by a competitor, but deliberately cannibalized by the company that paid $8.5 billion to own it. Skype's origin story starts with two file-sharing pirates and a team of Estonian programmers who figured out how to make free phone calls work when everyone said it was impossible. Niklas Sennström and Janis Friis, the duo behind Kazaa, realized the same peer-to-peer architecture that powered music piracy could handle voice calls, and three Estonian developers named Ahti Heinla, Priit Kasasalu, and John Tallinn wrote the actual code starting in 2002 with about 600,000 euros in seed funding. John Tallinn would later co-found the Future of Life Institute, working on AI safety research, but back in 2002, he was just one of three Estonian programmers solving a problem that would revolutionize communication. They called it Sky Peer-to-Peer before shortening it to Skype because someone already owned the Skyper domain. And there's a fantastic detail from those cash-strapped early days when the Estonian programmers joked about naming their asset management company Borealis Kinks, which happens to be an anagram for Niklas is broke. But here's why Skype changed everything. International phone calls cost a fortune at the time, and Skype's peer-to-peer architecture meant every computer on the network shared processing power with no expensive central servers needed, so the network scaled with its users at basically zero cost. What really made it work was figuring out how to traverse firewalls and NATs using stun and turn protocols, the technical barriers that had killed every earlier attempt at internet calling. August 29, 2003 brought the first public beta with 10,000 downloads on day one. And within months, they were adding 30,000 new signups every single day. By February 2004, the founders landed on the cover of Fortune magazine, and by early 2005, people were searching for Skype on Google more than the word Jesus, which sounds like hyperbole, but that's actually in the data. Series B funding brought in $18.8 million when downloads hit 8.1 million across 165 countries. Video calling launched in December 2005, and revenue climbed from $7 million in 2004 to a projected $60 million in 2005. Everything was going exactly right, which is usually when the trouble starts. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. It's a simple gesture, but it really helps the channel grow. Thanks, everyone. September 12, 2005 brought eBay's announcement that it would acquire Skype for $2.5 billion upfront with a potential earnout of another $1.4 billion, putting the total deal value at $4.1 billion. eBay's CEO Meg Whitman declared that communications is at the heart of e-commerce and community, but the problem was that it wasn't, and the strategic rationale was paper-thin from the start. What actually happened was a bidding war between eBay, Google, and News Corp, and eBay overpaid to keep Skype away from its competitors rather than because it had any real plan for what to do with it. The entire point of eBay's marketplace was anonymity, and as one analyst put it, the person buying Star Wars collector cups doesn't want a video chat with the seller. The acquisition was a disaster from day one, with Skype cycling through multiple presidents between 2005 and 2007 while eBay's corporate culture clashed violently with Skype's startup ethos. A hidden trap made everything worse because the core peer-to-peer technology wasn't actually owned by Skype, but by a separate company called Jolted, controlled by the founders and merely licensed to eBay. This meant eBay couldn't fully control the technology they'd just paid billions to acquire. October 2007 brought the reckoning when eBay announced a $1.4 billion write-down just 2 years after buying Skype, and this write-down exceeded eBay's entire net income for 2006. Fortune magazine called it Meg Whitman's folly. Despite all this corporate chaos, the product kept growing, and by 2008, Skype generated $551 million in revenue, while growing 44% year over year with 405 million registered users. eBay wanted out. May 10, 2011 brought Microsoft's announcement that it would acquire Skype for $8.5 billion in cash, Microsoft's largest acquisition at the time. For Silver Lake, this was legendary because they pulled in roughly $6 billion in gains in under 2 years. But for Microsoft, it was the beginning of a very expensive mistake. The price worked out to 32 times Skype's operating profits, and analysts were skeptical from the start, with one predicting that internal politics at Microsoft is going to kill this wonderful company, and tech columnist Robert Cringely writing that Ballmer would have paid anything for Skype, and $8.5 billion is just the price at which Google feels it is better for them to build rather than buy. Microsoft's plan was integration, folding Skype into everything. And in April 2013, they shut down Windows Live Messenger, which still had over 100 million users, forcibly migrating everyone to Skype. In 2015, they rebranded their enterprise product Link as Skype for Business, even though the two products had virtually nothing in common. And that's when the decision started that would alienate the user base completely. Between 2012 and 2016, Microsoft moved Skype from peer-to-peer to the cloud, shifting all the distributed nodes to Microsoft's data centers. And while this was probably necessary for mobile performance, it introduced dropped calls, lag, and reliability issues. The thing that made Skype revolutionary was gone. In 2016, Microsoft made Microsoft accounts mandatory, forcing longtime Skype users to link everything and adding more friction with every forced update. And then came the catastrophic redesign of 2017. June 2017 brought a Snapchat-inspired overhaul with highlights, emoji reactions, and flashy, colorful interfaces. And the response was nuclear, with UK App Store ratings dropping to 1 star, while US ratings fell from 3.5 stars to 1.5 stars. Peter Skillman, director of design for Skype, later admitted that calling became harder to execute and highlights didn't resonate with a majority of users. Microsoft spent over a year rolling the changes back, formally reverting the redesign in September 2018, but the damage was done. Over those years, Skype had accumulated instant messaging, file sharing, SMS integration, landline calling, screen sharing, group video, live translation, bots, add-ins, and something called emojis, burying the simple calling experience under mountains of feature bloat. Wired described Skype's codebase as the epitome of technical debt, a legacy peer-to-peer system from 2003 trying to compete with cloud-native competitors built from scratch. And that's when the biggest missed opportunity in tech history arrived. At the start of 2020, Skype held 32.4% of the video call market as the single largest share with approximately 40 million daily active users. And then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and billions of people suddenly needed video calling while Skype was the most recognized brand in the space. This should have been Skype's crowning moment. Instead, Zoom took everything. Zoom grew from 10 million daily meeting participants in December 2019 to 300 million by April 2020, a 2,900% increase in 4 months. And Zoom's mobile app got downloaded 485 million times in 2020 alone, while the word Zoom replaced Skype as a verb. Early 2021 brought the final numbers showing Zoom holding approximately 48.7% of the market, while Skype had collapsed to roughly 6.6%, an 80% decline in market share in a single year. Why did Zoom win when Skype had every advantage? Frictionless access meant clicking a link with no account required while Skype demanded logins, and Zoom's cloud-native architecture and relentless focus on video quality beat out Skype's years of feature bloat. Eric Yuan, Zoom's founder and former Cisco WebEx VP, had built Zoom from the ground up specifically to solve the reliability problems that plagued older video calling systems. Wired called the pandemic Skype's failure to capitalize on the biggest potential use case for its product in human history. And here's the most revealing detail. Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, hadn't mentioned Skype on an earnings call since 2017 because Microsoft was already building Skype's replacement. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. It's a simple gesture, but it really helps the channel grow. Thanks, everyone. March 14, 2017 brought the launch of Microsoft Teams, coming 6 years after Microsoft acquired Skype, and the origin story reveals everything. In 2016, Microsoft considered an $8 billion bid for Slack, the same amount they just paid for Skype. But Bill Gates reportedly argued they should build a competitor instead, and when that proposal got rejected, Microsoft executive Qi Lu led the creation of Teams. Teams' growth was extraordinary, climbing from roughly 2 million daily active users at launch to 20 million by November 2019, then 75 million by April 2020, and ultimately 320 million monthly active users by 2024. It's now used by 93% of Fortune 100 companies. The cannibalization was systematic. Skype for Business Online officially retired on July 31, 2021. Teams got selected as the integrated communications app in Windows 11, and Microsoft poured engineering resources into Teams during the pandemic while Skype stagnated. Jeff Teper, president of Microsoft 365 Collaborative Apps, later acknowledged that consumer calling minutes in Teams had grown 4 times in the 2 years leading up to Skype's shutdown. Microsoft chose to pursue a more lucrative market with Teams rather than fight to keep Skype on top. February 28, 2025, brought Microsoft's official announcement that Skype would be retired on May 5, 2025. There's an ironic footnote here because Teams Free doesn't support PSTN telephony, the cheap international calling that represented Skype's original value proposition, and Microsoft VP Amit Philay acknowledged that calling patterns had changed and people now have mobile data plans. Skype was fully shut down on May 5, 2025. Public reaction was mixed nostalgia and acceptance, with most people acknowledging Skype's pioneering role, but admitting they hadn't used it in years. One Reddit user captured the mood perfectly. "The Skype call music will still live on in my head, and I probably haven't used it for 15+ years." Skype's story is a paradox where the company that made video calling mainstream couldn't survive the era of video calling itself. 3 different owners in 6 years, eBay, Silver Lake, and Microsoft, each extracted value without building long-term brand equity, and Microsoft's $8.5 billion acquisition was driven more by fear of competitors than clear strategic vision. Most critically, Microsoft built its own replacement, using Skype as a foundation but leaving Skype itself to atrophy. When the pandemic arrived, the moment Skype had spent 17 years preparing for, Zoom's simplicity won the day. Microsoft paid $8.5 billion for Skype and then spent a decade systematically destroying it so Teams could take its place. That's not a failure of the product, but a failure of strategy. It's a reminder that in tech, being first doesn't guarantee you'll be the last one standing. And sometimes the company that invented the future is the first casualty of it.